I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, Iraq searching for a solution. As a top Democrat calls again for immediate withdrawal, the president meets for the first time with an advisory panel headed by his father's Secretary of State. The race against time. If you have a heart attack, can your ER act quickly enough to save your life? Tonight, a disturbing new study. More and more Americans are spending their golden years in assisted living facilities, but are some downright dangerous? CBS News investigates. And they fought for a nation that treated them like second-class citizens. Now they're about to get the highest civilian honor Congress can bestow.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hi, everyone. Well, just about everyone agrees Iraq is a mess. The question now is, can the president and the new Congress, led by the Democrats, agree on how to get out of it? The Democrats want a phased withdrawal. The president has been dead set against that. But he did say the other day it is time for a fresh perspective. Enter the Iraq Study Group. The bipartisan advisory panel, headed by two highly respected statesmen, James Baker and Lee Hamilton, is working on new options that may be the blueprint for a new strategy. And they had their first meeting with the president today. Jim Axelrod is at the White House. Jim?
Well, Katie, just about a week ago, the Bush administration's public stance on Iraq was absolutely we're winning. Full speed ahead. Tonight it seems to be full speed ahead on finding a way out of the mess in Iraq.
The Baker-Hamilton Commission spent 8 hours here at the White House today. Their first stop, a sit-down with the president and vice president.
I'm not going to prejudge the Baker Commission's report. I was pleased to meet with them.
But two ideas under consideration by the commission illustrate the challenges of reaching consensus on a way forward. Take a phased withdrawal of troops. The Democrat who will head the Senate Armed Services Committee insisted today that's what's needed to pressure the Maliki government to make peace among warring Iraqi factions.
We got to put greater responsibility on the Iraqis, and that the way to do that is to let the Iraqis know that within 4 to 6 months of the president notifying them that we're going to begin a phased redeployment of our troops out of Iraq.
Prior to last week's election, that was called a non-starter by the White House. And today, Press Secretary Tony Snow made it sound like the midterms hadn't changed a thing.
You give me a proposal that's got something to react to. If the conditions on the ground do not merit withdrawal, the answer is no.
The other issue is engaging Syria and Iran more directly in bringing peace to Iraq. James Baker himself has raised that idea. But when Mr. Bush addressed Iran today, after a meeting with Israel's prime minister, he spoke only of Iran's nuclear program and only about further isolation.
I think it's very important for the world to unite with one common voice to say to the Iranians that if you choose to continue forward, you'll be isolated.
The White House says this was a discussion, not a deposition. No policy alternatives were exchanged by either side. The president always says he charts his strategy in Iraq based on conditions on the ground. Today was a chance for the panel to hear exactly what the president thinks those conditions are. Katie?
So, Jim, in addition to meeting with the Baker Commission, are there signs that the White House is somehow completely reassessing its policy vis-a-vis Iraq?
Well, just outside the White House gates, for instance, at the State Department, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice delayed her trip to Vietnam so she could participate in a further review of Iraq policy. At the Pentagon, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Peter Pace, scrubbing Iraq policies from top to bottom, in his words. Even if this was going on prior to the midterms, we probably wouldn't be hearing about it. Katie?
All right. Jim Axelrod. Jim, thanks so much. Well, just as it is at the White House, what to do about the war in Iraq is the #1 item on the agenda for the new 110th Congress. It was just a year ago this week that Democrat John Murtha of Pennsylvania, a highly decorated Vietnam veteran, long considered a hawk on defense issues, stunned House colleagues by calling for the immediate withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq. Murtha is now the top choice of Speaker-in-Waiting Nancy Pelosi to be the new majority leader, though Steny Hoyer of Maryland is also in the running. Earlier today, in an exclusive interview, Congressman Murtha told me that he intends to press harder than ever for an American troop pullout from Iraq.
We're caught in a civil war, and I'm absolutely convinced that there's no alternative. Anything else, we've lost the hearts and minds of the people. 70 to 80% of the Iraqis want us out of there. Most of the American public wants us out of there. We're spending $8 billion a month, Katie, and we need to start to redeploy our troops, and I think that'll actually increase stability. regardless of what the White House says.
And when you say redeploy, Congressman, you're talking about complete withdrawal?
I'm talking about complete redeployment of our troops out of Iraq over a period of time. The Iraqis have no incentive to take over their own destiny, and I think that's the first step in solving this problem.
But, Congressman, what about those who say if U.S. forces leave en masse, then the country will descend into even further chaos?
Yeah, that's not what the Iraqis say. The Iraqis say they have more confidence in their own forces, they have more confidence in their own police, their own military. So I don't agree with that.
Now that the Democrats have taken over both houses of Congress, what are they really empowered to do in terms of foreign policy, Congressman?
Let me tell you, every solution, everything we look for has to come with the Gulf or with the war, with the Iraqi war. $8 billion a month, $11 million an hour. The people say they want Medicare to be changed, they want the drug program that they passed to be changed, they want educational benefits to be improved. None of that's going to happen until we stop spending $8 billion a month. And that's what the public is saying.
There was hell to pay, though, Congressman, for what you said. You were called a defeatocrat, a liberal turncoat. Senator John McCain said you had become too emotional. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said your comments were damaging to troop morale. Did you feel vindicated last Tuesday?
Well, I certainly did feel vindicated. I felt vindicated because I saw the difference between when I first spoke out and most of the American public disagree with my position to the vote itself, which showed that most public agrees we have to do something. We have to change the direction of this country. We have to reduce the spending. We have to change our priorities in this country. And I think the president's going to recognize that, and we're ready to work with him.
Congressman John Murtha. Congressman, thanks so much for your time.
Nice talking to you, Katie.
Meanwhile, in Baghdad today, a top U.S. commander stepped up the pressure on the Iraqis to take more responsibility for their own security. General John Abizaid told Prime Minister Maliki his government has to disband Shiite militias. Meanwhile, another Iraqi official has an idea for U.S. forces that sounds a lot like Congressman Murtha's: redeployment. Here's Elizabeth Palmer.
Muaffaq al-Rubai is Iraq's national security advisor. No single Iraqi has worked more closely with the U.S. since the start of the war.
Iraq needs a radical review.
Rubai believes there are three keys to success. First, the redeployment of U.S. troops. American troops should be pulled off Baghdad's streets and sent back to their bases, leaving the Iraqi army to take full charge of security in the capital.
Because two armies in the same battle space, and the coordination is something is really difficult.
So they're working at cross purposes sometimes?
Well, sometimes it works, other times doesn't.
In the past, when U.S. forces have withdrawn from some neighborhoods, the killing got worse, as Iraqi forces either couldn't control or actively helped armed militias and death squads. But, says Rubai, the militias can only be disarmed by negotiation. All militia leaders, no matter how violent, must be included.
We have no red line on any person, individuals, or groups or party.
Finally, the talking shouldn't end with Iraq's militias. Rubai says the United States needs to talk directly with the Iranians because they're funding the most powerful militias, undermining Baghdad's fragile control. The Iranians, says Rubai, must be convinced that if chaos reigns in Iraq, it may reign in the whole region.
If the country split up, it will spill over to Iran, to Syria, to the neighboring country.
Most of all, al-Rubai is worried that his government has been pushed to the fringe of the Iraq Study Group's discussions, and they'll be the last to find out what the new U.S. policy will be. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Baghdad.
As we've been reporting, Iraq is the top agenda item for the new 110th Congress. It's not the only one, though, and for the rest of this week, we'll look at the other top issues, including taxes, immigration, the minimum wage, and prescription drug prices, and we're keeping track of how Congress performs. And about one prescription drug, there is a warning tonight. It's the flu treatment Tamiflu. The FDA says people who take Tamiflu, especially children, should be monitored for hallucinations, delirium, even convulsions. The agency says there have been a number of these cases reported overseas. The FDA is ordering the label updated, by the way, to include that warning. There is a lot more CBS News straight ahead. And coming up next, what hospital ERs could do to save the lives of hundreds of heart attack victims every year.